It is good to see you, good to be with you. I can't wait for this weekend, but today is going to be a special, special day. Guys, we're talking about the names of Jesus, prophesied about him years in advance, things that he would come to fulfill. And I got thinking this week about names and naming kids. And man, as I reflect back on that time, that was way more stressful than I thought it was going to be. I mean, we actually went to start this conversation, my wife and I, and we bought a book that was about this thick, and it was just full of names. How many of you bought the baby book of names when you were naming kids? Yeah, we did. I think I went through every single page, multiple times. And you start going through this list of names, and you start realizing there's some pressure here. Like, there's some pressure, because this isn't just like, what am I going to call them for a minute or two? This is like their name for life. And you start seeing some names, and you're like, oh, what that name means? I guess we can't use that, you know? Or one of the things, there was some really revealing conversations between my wife and I, because there were some unwritten rules that nobody ever tells you about when it comes to naming your kids. Like this one, you cannot name your kid after someone your spouse dated, okay? Nobody told me that. Specifically, nobody told me she dated someone named, and, right? And it just started knocking off all kinds of names that I thought were pretty good names. You can't name someone after a relative in the family. There's already got somebody with that name. We knocked out a lot of good names. She'd throw one out and be, nope, I got a cousin named that. Nope, I got an uncle named that. Nope, we got somebody in the family that's in jail for that. Nope, we got to keep moving. We got to move on. Like, nope, those are good names, but no, we can't do it. Claimed. A lot of the good names were already taken. Again, the definitions of names matter. We didn't pay that close attention, apparently, to our daughter, Cameron. She came to us one year long after she was born and said, hey, my name means crooked nose. Did you guys know that? I was like, no, I did not know that. But good thing you don't have one. So you're good. You're good. We're good. Right? I went to grade school with a girl whose last name was Mann, M-A-N-N. Her mom's name was Anita. Anita Mann. Right? You got to put it in a sentence, and you got to make sure, is this going to work or is this not going to work, right? Now, to her credit, she married into that name, so it wasn't totally her parents' fault. With the last name Rector, you got to be real careful. There's some names that are automatically disqualified right off the top. Names are a big deal. A lot of pressure, a lot connected to it, and a lot of meaning underneath of them. I think that's why I really have appreciated this look at these prophesied names of Jesus from the book of Isaiah, chapter 9, where it's told about Jesus that he would be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. I want to zero in on the name Mighty God today. And I want to try to get underneath that and try to show the significance that Jesus' name would be Mighty God. When you think of the word mighty, what comes to mind? What image in your head comes to mind? Maybe if you look at the screen, maybe this is what comes to your mind. Maybe you go straight to comics and you think about the Avengers, right? And you think about this strength that they have. Maybe for some of you, you go to the comics, but it's a different set of comics. Maybe it's more Superman, Wonder Woman. There's these pictures of strength and a level of mighty that's beyond the average person. Maybe you think, hey, let's go real life. Let's talk about the mountain. How many of you start thinking about the world's strongest man, the mountain? This guy can lift, I don't know, I think he can lift a whole city, pretty much. I mean, he's just absolutely a just humongous human being. A bunch of you Gen Xers, let me engage you for a second, because there's a few places that you might go with the word mighty. You might go Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. You might go Mighty Ducks. But this week at Fields Coffee, I did a little survey, asked five Gen Xers, when you hear mighty, what do you think? I was so pleased that this was their answer. They think of Mighty Mouse. There we go. Don't let the size fool you. He's a strong little dude. All right, the right answer, though, to this question, when you think of mighty, what should come to mind? Here it is right here. Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris. When you think mighty, you think Chuck Norris because Chuck Norris does not sleep. He waits. Chuck Norris doesn't strike gold. He roundhouse kicks rocks and makes gold. When Chuck Norris lifts weights, the weights get in shape. The flu gets a Chuck Norris shot every year. Chuck Norris doesn't read books. He stares them down until he gets the information he wants. Chuck Norris doesn't breathe. He holds air hostage. Chuck Norris can slam a revolving door. Chuck Norris makes onions cry. When Chuck Norris enters a room, he doesn't turn the lights on. He turns the darkness off. And since it's Christmas, this seems appropriate. Chuck Norris can build a snowman out of rain. Listen, that might be where we go when we think mighty. But when this prophecy was first spoken, there was a place, that word mighty, and specifically mighty God, man, it opened up a whole wealth of story, a whole wealth of history that connected back to the movement of God in the history of Israel's life. These moments in life where God moved unmistakably, where he did something so big, so strong, so powerful, that there was no other explanation for it other than God made it happen. Therefore, he is worthy of worship, worthy of praise. This word, Hebrew word for mighty, Gabor, it means strong. It's a masculine term. It's a word that could mean warrior or hero or rescuer, brave. All this is connected into that word. And Jesus, in many ways, fits all of that. But it was the combination of mighty and God that really opens up some of this understanding. When the Jewish people heard the word mighty God, it brought imagery of the things that God had unmistakably done. Like, he created the world. He spoke it out, and it came to pass. We have a term that some people will use called speaking it into existence. You ever heard somebody say that? I'm going to speak it into existence. I spoke it into existence. And it's kind of a way to describe maybe a self-talk that you might do where you project into the future. I'm going to become this someday. I'm going to achieve that someday. Maybe it's not you talking to yourself. Maybe it's a parent speaking over a child. They're going to become this someday. I'm going to speak it into existence. It's kind of a way to look at life through a positive lens, to be goal setting and to look out there in the future. Maybe in some ways to not be so surprised when it becomes a reality because you knew it all along. I spoke it into existence. Like, that's kind of a neat, clever way to talk about things in life that might be completely out of your control. But when it comes to God, and the idea of speaking it into existence, he literally did that. He literally said, let there be light. And there was light. He literally said, let there be dry ground. Let there be animals. Let there be stars in the sky. Let there be. He spoke it. And because of his might, because of his power, because of his strength, because of the capacity that he had inside his own being, whatever he said came to pass. Put your head, if you can, around that level of might, that level of strength. When the people heard that the Messiah would be called Mighty God, they thought the mighty God, like who created the world by speaking it into existence. Like the mighty God who told 100-year-old man and his wife who was barren, who had never been able to have kids, you guys are going to be the parents of a great nation that will multiply and become as numerous, look up in the sky, as the stars in the sky. How in the world does a 100-year-old guy and a barren 90-year-old woman become parents? Only God. Only God. Only God making sure in that moment there was no doubt where the strength, where the power, where the might was coming from. When this word about Jesus, that he would be called Mighty God, was first spoken, it was like the mighty God who led the Israelites out of Egypt, who heard their cries of oppression, and who sent the plagues, these unmistakable acts of someone who had control over nature in a way no other person does. This same mighty God who led us across the Red Sea on dry ground and then closed up that sea on the pursuing army, the same mighty God who sustained us in the wilderness for 40 years, feeding us daily, going before us with a pillar of cloud by day, a pillar of fire by night. The same God who made sure that our clothing and our sandals and our shoes never wore out over 40 years, even though we kept wearing them over and over again. When the word mighty God was spoken over the Messiah, this is where the Israelites went. This is where their mind went. This was a declaration that the God who had moved in these kind of ways was going to show up. He was going to show up in a powerful way. He would be mighty God, that when he enters the world, he would be fully God, fully capable, fully powerful, and yet fully human. Human. Galatians chapter 4, verse 4 says that when the time had fully come, God sent his Son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those under the law that we might receive adoption to sonship. This is what Christmas is a celebration of. It's that at the right moment in time, God intervened in human history to do something so mighty, so big, so outlandish, it almost seems implausible to believe. At the right moment, historians, sociologists, Bible commentators have all marveled at the moment in history that God chose to come into this world and how perfectly aligned all the factors were at that moment. Does that surprise you that God in his infinite wisdom would send his Son into the world at the exact right, perfect time? Does that surprise you? Again, historians look at the state of the world, the history of the world, the geographical setup of the world, the modern state of the world, the viewpoints in thinking, and the views on religion at the time. How all these came together at this especially significant moment of time when Jesus was born. When the time had fully come, God sent his Son, born of a woman, born under the law. That's an important piece. Born of a woman, born under the law. You and I have a problem when it comes to a relationship with God. And the problem is that God is perfect. He is holy. He's set apart. And when he's created us with the capacity to choose relationship with him or reject relationship with him, to obey what he asks us to do or to reject what he's asked us to do. And all of us have rejected at one point or another, over and over and over again, though it would only take one rejection for God to have a problem in the relationship with us. And that problem, that issue has separated us. And so there's a punishment due. There's a penalty due. There's something that was hanging out there between you and I and God that could never really adequately be solved because we could never make up for that gap with good works or trying a little harder, or let's try to run up the scoreboard on the good deeds a little more than on the bad deeds. None of that was going to work. One misstep is all it was going to take to separate us forever from God. Unless there was some way to erase that penalty, some way to forgive that penalty, some way for that punishment to be absorbed by somebody else. But to do that, there would have to be someone who could step forward, who could say, I'll take that on as my own, and I'm not already penalized myself. Like, I don't already have a strike against me. I don't already have a rejection. Somebody who's already in good fellowship with the Creator. That's why it says that when just the right time came, God sent his Son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those under the law. Jesus came to the earth uniquely qualified and mightily capable of achieving our rescue because he was God, born of a woman, but not born with the same sinful nature that you and I are born with, born into a world where he would be tempted and tried like we are, but not succumb to that. He would be a perfect representation of what humanity could be before God, but no one else could live up to that standard. He would give his life in place of ours to wear the penalty that our life deserves. Galatians chapter 3, verse 13 says that Christ redeemed us from the curse of the law by becoming a curse for us. For it's written, cursed is everyone who was hung on a pole. You start to see a little bit in this verse, and Galatians does a good job at unpacking this, that there was some legal and relational separation issues between us and God, and that Jesus became the perfect sacrifice for that because he was uniquely qualified to take on our guilt, to take on our punishment, and to redeem us back relationally with God. He came at just the right time. He was uniquely qualified. He was mightily able, totally perfect, bore our penalty, bore our curse on the cross, and now extends life to us and his power to us. It's such a surprise. It is such a welcome surprise. And I hope that part of what Christmas can do for you is wake you up to the surprise that is the intervention of God on your behalf. We love surprises, right? We love surprises, and Christmas is always a fun time for surprises. I heard a story recently about a lady that was, she was prepping some stuff at the house, making some Christmas cookies, and just had a whole bunch of chores related to her home and getting things ready for Christmas. So she's full-fledged into, that world. Knock at the door, and there's a guy at the door that introduces himself, and he says, "Hey, look, I'm trying to make a little bit of money here before Christmas. I do odd jobs. You got anything that you need done? And all I would ask you is just pay it for whatever the job's worth." She was like, "Well, it's not really time right now. I'm kind of going. Actually, you know what? I do have something you could do. I've got a porch out back that needs painted. There's a couple of cans of green paint in the garage. If you would do that, absolutely, that'd be great. And I'll pay you for what the job's worth when you're done." So he says, "Thank you." And he goes to the back and starts painting. She's in the kitchen. She doesn't really have a view of what he's doing at the time. She just carries on. She's almost lost in her prep work and effort. She's kind of lost track of time, doesn't even remember that he's out there. Doorbell rings again. She goes to answer the door. He's done. She can tell he's done some painting. He's got a little bit on his clothes. And he says, "Hey, I'm all done. Thank you for the opportunity." And she says, "Did you do a good job?" And he says, "Yeah, I think I did a pretty good job. But hey, I just wanted to clear something up. That's not a Porsche out back. That's a Mercedes." The surprise that Jesus brought was not a surprise of dread. His surprise is a surprise to the dead, to those who are alienated, separated, with no hope, to be able to connect with Jesus, to connect with God, to connect in a relationship with him. He's a surprise in the most exhilarating, in the most breathtaking of ways, because he introduces us to the strength that he has to enter into life, a life that seems to us irreparably broken. Like one of the most honest places that a person can come before God is the place where they realize, even on my best day, no matter how bad I want to be who you want me to be, God, no matter how hard I try to do things that would honor you, that would glorify you, that would leave no room at all for you to see any wavering in my commitment to you. No matter what I try to do, I seem to be, and life seems to be, irreparably broken. I just can't get it together. There's a verse in Romans where the Apostle Paul has that exact dialogue with God. Maybe you'll resonate with this principle. He says, in Romans 7:21, "I've discovered this principle of life, that when I want to do what is right, I inevitably do what is wrong." Can I get an amen? Whenever I want to do what is right, I inevitably do what is wrong. I love God's law with all my heart, but there is another power within me that is at war with my mind. And this war makes me a slave to the sin that is still within me. What a miserable person I am. Who will free me from this life that is dominated by sin and death? Thank God. The answer is in Jesus Christ, our Lord. What Paul does in that chapter, and then he goes on in chapter 8 to develop really this theology of victory in the life of anyone who places their faith in Jesus. What he goes on to do is something he loves to do in his writings, and that is make an argument from the greater to the lesser. Like if one thing is true, well then absolutely the other is true. For example, if someone with superhuman strength can lift 1,000 pounds, well then they can definitely lift 100 pounds. That's the argument. From the greater to the lesser, right? If he could run 10 miles, well, he could run 2 miles. It's from the greater to the lesser. And Paul loves to invite you and I into the world where we take in fully the mighty works that God has done, undeniably, and then apply them to our own life and say, if God can do that, which is greater, harder, more difficult, absolutely, he could do this, which is easier, simpler, not quite as heavy. That's not to oversimplify life or to say that what you're going through isn't a struggle, but to be able to see, here's what God has done unmistakably. Here's his mighty work. Here's his mighty power on display. And if he could do that, well, he could absolutely fix what I'm going through. Here's that list. Here's a short list of those mighty things that God has done. Number one, he's created the world. We talked about that. We look around at the world that we all live in right now, and what is our answer for where this all came from? What is our answer? That it came by accident, or that it came because there was an architect, because there was a designer, because there was somebody involved who meticulously and purposefully, mightily made it all come to reality. People for centuries have been making decisions on which idea or concept makes more sense to them. I would argue that it takes infinitely more faith to believe that what we experience in this world today, just the created world itself, that it all got here by accident compared to that it came here and got here, including you and I, because somebody put it here. Someone with strength and might and wisdom and power. God has already done that. So because he's already done that, we know the level of power that he has. He's already come and been incarnated and lived as a human being in our world. The God of the heavens coming down into this itty-bitty living space of a human being and doing life like us, walking through life. If he can do that, then there's a whole lot of other things I should know that he can do. If he can die on a cross on a Friday, and 3 days later on a Sunday, he can be raised to a newness of life. If the resurrection is real, if the resurrections happen, if God can do that, well, what else do I know he could do in my life? Maybe you're in a relational struggle right now. And you're asking, what can God do? And to me, guys, this is the question. This is the Christmas question. Are you walking in the power that the mighty God Jesus offers you in your life? Are you walking in the power that he offers you in your life? And maybe relationally, there is something that's broken. It could be a marriage, it could be a kid relationship, it could be a parent relationship, sister, sibling, cousin, whatever. Something is broken in a way that you've tried everything you know how to try, and nothing has worked. And when we get to that place, like, it just feels like we're up against something that's absolutely insurmountable. The odds are so far against, there's just no way, no how. But I want to invite you into this story. And I want you to answer honestly, if God could raise somebody from the dead, if he has demonstrated that he can do that, then is it not realistic that he could do whatever he needs to do in your life to bring about change? Like if I was to invite someone to take a look, and we brought a dead body, and I know that sounds morbid, but a dead body in here to the room, and then two arguing people. And I said, which one's going to be harder to do? To get the dead guy back alive or to get these two reconciled? Like, I'm not saying this is easy, but 100 out of 100 people would look at this scenario and say, oh, the dead guy alive, that's way harder than getting these two reconciled. God has already done the hard part. He's already demonstrated he has the capacity to do it. He's already shown his mighty hand. So he can bring about change in relationships in your life. Maybe it's a financial battle that you're up against, and job loss or just whatever, financial pressure. The economy's awful. Everybody's money just doesn't go very far right now. Maybe it's a certain number or a certain thing. There's something hanging over you, and it's a very tangible, financial, resource-related thing. You're tempted to believe that there's no hope and there's nothing that's going to come about from this. God doesn't promise us that he meets every financial whim and want that we have. But I will tell you, I've seen time and time again, even in those material areas of life, that is a space that God loves to show up in surprising and unexpected ways, where his mighty power is displayed in the life of his people. For some of you, there's a controlling influence that's in your life. There's something that you are turning to either cope or cover the pain or just numb out. And it's become a driver for you. It's become something that you used to say you manage, but now you understand it's full-blown out of control. But the power that it has over your life seems to keep winning. It seems to keep putting you in a further position of despair. And you're wondering, is there ever hope? Is this ever going to be able to be turned around? We have a God who is a mighty God who came and lived on this earth and demonstrated over and over again that he can reach into seemingly irreversible situations and free people. He gave blind people sight. He gave deaf people the ability to hear. He gave paralyzed people the ability to walk, and he could do that in your life. Don't you believe for a second that he can't? He's already displayed things that are harder to do, but he can do it. So walk by faith and allow him to show that strength into your life. For some of you, there's an incredible power called unbelief that is just hanging over your life, and it's never been easy for you to do what seemingly other people can do easily, and that is believe in God, to trust in God, to rely on God, to turn your life over to God. Real faith has never been a part of your life. You'd like to, but it just seems like it's kind of eluded you for whatever reason. If that's you, I just invite you to look to the mighty God who reveals himself in unmistakable ways and invites the skeptic to throw their questions, their concerns, their frustrations, their heartaches, their arguments at him, and invites them into a journey of faith where they can receive that gift. If you've never placed your faith personally in Jesus, to say, I need you. I'm broken beyond repair. I need you to come in and save me. I need you to reshape my life. I need you to forgive me. That's a conversation that God will not deny, and we want to help facilitate. So as we sing these next couple songs in a moment, if you want to talk to somebody or pray with somebody, head right over to the baptistry to your right, or use the QR code on the screen just to start that dialogue, just to say, hey, that's me. I don't even know what I need to do here, but I need Jesus. I need help. My prayer is that as you reach out, as you turn to trust Jesus, that you will experience that mighty power of God coming into your life in the most surprising and total ways, revealing for you a relationship and a confidence and a firm foundation that you might not even know could have existed. I pray that you could experience that you could trust and just lean in to the power that God has for your life. In fact, I want to just invite you to go ahead and stand and just join me here in a moment in reading one of my favorite scriptures that speaks to the power that God has for us in our life. And that it's a power that goes beyond our ability to even be able to comprehend. God wants immeasurably more for your life than you could ever imagine. His strength is immeasurably more than you could ever conceive of. In this moment, will you open your heart to Him? Why don't you read this with me as we wrap this in prayer? Now to Him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to His power that is at work within us. To Him be the glory in the church and in Jesus Christ throughout all generations, forever and ever. Amen.